basically the same thing he told me. What's that? Time is
Oh, great.
Church people hold over bag of cans over there. Did you hear that? Can man.
Hey, Kurt, call on Tanya for the first two items. Okay. And for how we talked yesterday, I'm just going to read the abbreviated part of the intro. Just stick to the facts. And then we'll talk to John about some of the legal parts. That's okay.
Morning. Hey, how you doing? Good. Good.
All of it is hopefully you want to work on it. I'm going to go relatively quick in on these. I don't know all these subjects. It's on the list that people would believe. I don't know if you've already had a meeting.
You can address these letters. At all?
No. Purpose of this is to address lawyer fees.
Talking about the communication with people.
Oh, those, yeah. We talked. There's two of them, or three of letters actually.
Be sure to ask folks to speak in the mic because we don't know.
When they get up to talk, just reiterate what they need to say. Because I don't know all this.
Tanya, talk to Kurt. He's going to call on you first items. I'll do the intro on C and D, and you got everything else.
I got a nice email from Dan Steele this morning. He said, I told him to look at the island today, and he said, yeah, it's too bad that people give them themselves for a better son and lake, and they have to put up with this. He said, but I guess that's the world we live in.
Everything working?
I think
Kurt's supposed to be back by the next meeting. I don't know exactly what day he's coming back. That's what Michael told me.
He sent an email out. I can't remember what day he said he was coming back.
Well, Chuck would sit down, I tell you. His belly's too big. I can't see around. Oh. I don't know. I recognize her, but I don't know. I can't think
How do you like do?
Who's that?
that first woman right there.
It's H. Roby.
Is that Donna?
Yeah. I haven't seen that guy. I haven't seen him in a while.
That's so.
And that's the guy that said English says he's going to run over the next golf cart that runs in front of his pickup truck.
Oh, is that the one?
I hope you don't accidentally do that, because if you do, I'm going to email the signature.
Oh, is that the Myrtle Beach guy? Or Pebble Beach guy? I forgot what his name is.
A few of them.
I guess they do generate a little income.
I didn't know anybody was that interested in us buying a pickup or not.
You know, last time we had this deal with Mitchell.
Yeah.
The only thing that was called was the resolution. They felt it was all worked out.
Good morning.
Between my attorney and
Morning.
her and Brian Cozy in the district office. We had that shit with some of these people. They have today, and I mean, he was the only one that came out of the website and said,
Jesus Christ.
it's not over yet. That's working with Walton McCain.
Who's that, Puffenberger?
Buttonberger.
Yeah.
I know he's had a foot problem, and the doctor said he can't do anything about it. It's just deteriorating. He's been playing golf with a boot on.
Another one was rather than that. I'm not here.
Oh, I'm sure.
Reminds me of COVID. Actually, this used to be fairly common.
I think we were talking about the pickleball course today, too. We wouldn't have enough room. We talked about that. We had about 40 people, and then when the fire department came up, they were all gone. Well, there's Mr. Jackson. The first time I seen him in 3 years. Put on a little weight, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, quite a bit, looks like. Brony got some roasted cream, and we'll have the old crowd back
I've never seen the guy.
Well, guys that said they were going to be here that haven't come in.
Here's the fun one.
Does he even know it? Because he's usually a government guy. How did your brother get involved?
This is the Oh, Henley.
We'll get down to the
Hey, John.
question. I'm just going to read
Mike.
the first couple.
You ready? Call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance. Please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. Next regular meeting is scheduled for Friday, June 12th, 2015 at 9 a.m. at the Community Center, 3500 Edgewater Drive, Sebring, Florida. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off or put it on silence, please. Next on the agenda is a consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the last meeting of April 24th, and the Treasurer's Report and the golf financials for April. Any comments?
Move for approval.
Motion approved. I've got comment.
Okay.
I'll second.
There you go.
Yeah. I've asked for some modification to the minutes. Due to recent events, I'm requesting that the draft of the minutes are revised to include as much as possible from the audio my comments brought forth when the consent agenda was under discussion, along with the responses made by Michael Wright and John McClure. Many of my statements were not included in the draft that I read on the website or I was given. Additionally, at the end of the meeting, during the discussion to and from the board, additional comments were made and they were not included. I would like to have the draft of the minutes revised to include those things that were omitted. And I'm not asking for anything that wasn't on the audio to be put in those minutes.
You have a question, Allison?
Yes, just a question of clarification. Do you want more than what you had sent in your original email, or do you just want to go on record with all of your audio?
Well, I'd like to have as much of the audio based upon what's going on here.
So
Okay.
during the consent agenda and then during the discussion to and from the board at the very
Right.
end, and just put you on record for everything that you said?
If you would.
That's fine. I just need a clarification.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Public comment?
I think you need to amend you've got a motion to approve.
Right?
I think you need to get to the point where you have a motion to approve as amended for Mr. Halvick's comments. So
I'll make that motion.
You can't hear us? Well, let's take a couple minutes and get that fixed. Sounds loud up here.
What Mr. McClure has suggested is, why don't we basically not vote on the minutes today, let Ms. Lee revise them, bring them back at the next meeting.
Okay.
You still have a motion.
Yes.
You still have a motion you need to withdraw.
Okay. I need a motion to withdraw. Oh, that sounds better. Can you hear us now?
I'll make that motion to withdraw.
Second.
Basically, what happened, you withdrew your second and you withdrew the motion. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But they still need to approve the treasurer's report.
Yes.
We ready to go now?
We still have the treasurer's report.
You'll still need to approve the golf financials and the treasurer's report, so the new motion will just be to approve those two.
Okay. So do we have to amend that?
No, you just need to make the motion. The first motion was withdrawn.
Okay.
What you're
I
doing...
need a motion to approve the golf financials and the treasurer's report for April.
I'm done.
I make that a motion.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Now we can proceed. Public comment. Back to the board. Call the roll.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
President McCullough?
Yes. Action agenda, resolution number 2015-05/29-16. A resolution of the Sun and Lake of Sebring Improvement District to approve the purchase of a new 2015 Chevy Silverado to replace the code enforcement vehicle totaled in an accident on March 20th, 15, and to approve a budget amendment 2015-4 to the budget. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Excuse me, the audio, I know the audio is probably better for the audience, but I'm having a hard time with it because it seems to be,
It's very loud up
the tone
here.
seems to be,
Echoing.
it's the tone of the audio, I think. Maybe you can
Right.
temper it just a little bit. I'm
right.
sorry.
All right, Tanya, you want to take the lead on this?
Yes, Tanya Kennedy, Finance Director. Staff is requesting the purchase of a new 2015 Chevy Silverado under the state sheriff's contract to replace the code enforcement's 2007 Ford F-150 that was totaled in an accident on March 20th, 2015. The state contract price for the truck is $22,010, offered by Allen J. Automotive. The attached budget amendment represents insurance proceeds received. And since the insurance proceeds were received in the current year, we'd like to go ahead and purchase this vehicle instead of purchasing it in 2016. Additionally, like I mentioned, we had $25,000 budgeted in next year's budget for the purchase, so we'd like to go ahead and purchase that now.
Well, walk us through this. Are you saying that we're replacing one vehicle for the total vehicle, the one that had the accident?
We are replacing one vehicle that was totaled, but we also are trading in a 2013 GMC Sierra that has over 111,000 miles. We also are trading in that truck to buy one truck.
And how many are we getting? We're buying one?
One truck, yes, sir.
Okay.
The net effect is $1,140.
The net effect is $1,148, yes, sir.
Other comments? Public comment?
My name is Bill Jackson. I live in Unit 2. I assume this was the accident where we got our code enforcement officer all banged up.
Can't hear you. You have to pick the mic up or something.
I assume this is the accident where our code enforcement officer was injured.
Yes.
Why are we buying Chevrolet Silverado? It seems like all they do is drive around in here. It's not a vehicle we use for heavy hauling or anything else. So and plus we have a lifetime of use for that thing, and the gasoline's going to cost more. Why are we buying a Silverado?
Basically a half-ton pickup truck, and it's what we need for the code enforcement officer.
It's a two-wheel
Well,
drive.
if I was the code enforcement officer, I can see where you'd need a half-ton pickup. But I'm not. And the man who was in that, I don't think he needed a half-ton pickup either. To me, this sounds like what we want, not what we need. And I think we should look and buy something less expensive that'll cost us less gas to run it. And if anyone else hits it, it just rolls easier. That's all right.
Bill, maybe the only thing, I thought the same thing, but then I thought, if he would have been in a little small pickup truck when he got hit, he may have gotten killed.
Well,
I mean,
if I step out in the street and a big bus hits me, I may get killed too.
Yeah.
But I managed to survive it. So I'm just asking why we are spending money that we don't need to spend. For a lot of years, the maintenance people drove around on Gator tractors. I don't hear of any of them being run over and killed. So all I'm saying is, let's mind our pennies more. Let's get something that will do the job, and we'll move on.
If I read this correctly, Tanya, if I read this correctly, our total cost on this is $1,148?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all it's costing us. We're saving out of the budget next year of $24,000.
Joe Eck for the record. This truck that you're replacing there, who's going to be driving that truck while Bob's gone? We do not have a code enforcement now. The only place that we got code on is whatever the security finds. And I do know that Bob is still working at home on different things. And the other thing is, too, with this newspaper thing that goes out with our water bill, why isn't stuff put in the paper there about people being injured or whatever, or robberies, break-ins, and everything else? All you see in that thing anymore is advertisement. But $1,000 for a new truck, I got to go against you, Bill, but we need to get it.
We anticipate code enforcement officer to be back at work in about 2 weeks.
Back to the board. Call the roll.
Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
President McCullough?
Yes. Next, Resolution 2015-05/29-17, a resolution of the Sun and Lake of Sebring Improvement District directing the general manager to negotiate and execute a 36-month contract with Comcast to provide bundled internet, telephone, and television services to the district.
Motion approved.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Tanya?
Tanya Kennedy, Finance Director. Since January 15, the district has had 2 major internet outages with CenturyLink and disruption of operations at the district office, golf club, and restaurant. What we're requesting today is moving to Comcast. The savings to the district will be approximately $1,400 a month, and this is for a bundled internet, television, and telephone provider. Additionally, switching to Comcast will provide us faster upload and download speeds that CenturyLink is not able to provide us. And faster internet speeds will allow the district to perform backup services that we've never been available. It's not been available to us in the past. It will allow us to continue our current operations at faster speeds. DirecTV will also be discontinued to allow Comcast as our television provider.
Tanya, you sufficiently backed up. We're not going to lose any of the data we've had when you switch this over, right?
Correct. What I do now is I physically take a backup tape across the street to the clubhouse, and we keep it in a safe over there in case of a fire. We do that once a week.
Tanya, we had a letter from a resident that was questioning the worth of using Comcast, and one of the things they mentioned was the fact that they had, in their case, had misrepresented the speed of the computer. So, have you checked all that?
I've checked references. I've also inquired with the city of Sebring regarding Comcast services, and I feel this would be a important and a good move for us.
So you've done your homework on this?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay.
In that letter, they requested it be read at the meeting. Should you read that letter?
We can just include it in the record if you like, unless you just want us to read it out loud.
Well, that was their request, so. Same thing's in presented. Are they here?
No, they couldn't be here.
Okay. All right. So you're saying you don't need to read it?
It's up to the board.
Why don't you read it, and then we'll have to worry about it.
Dear Board of Directors, Pat and I will not be able to attend the meeting tomorrow. However, we would like to raise a strong objection to a Comcast deal. Comcast has a sordid reputation for the worst customer service in the industry. Last year, we decided that we wanted faster internet speed, and Comcast said their speed was double what CenturyLink offered. So we agreed to switch only our internet service. Shortly thereafter, a young couple appeared identifying themselves as Comcast installers. Actually, they were just hired to run the Comcast line from a junction box in our neighbor's yard to the side of our house where telephone and internet service entered our house. They proceeded with hand tools to dig a trench for the cable. They did not contract with the company that marks location of underground utility lines and cut our CenturyLink phone line. After an exhausting round of calling Comcast and being rerouted to numerous people, we called Comcast and told them to cease and desist. We called CenturyLink and a most helpful technician came to our house, strung a new line, and restored our service. Then he explained that our CenturyLink speed was more than sufficient to upload, download, and stream videos and movies. CenturyLink was right. We are totally satisfied with their speed and mostly with CenturyLink's customer service. Comcast would be the last company we would ever use. You are making a huge mistake contracting with these people. Has anyone contacted CenturyLink for a quote? Please have this read at the meeting. We would be glad to answer any questions by phone, as we unfortunately cannot attend. And this letter was signed William E. Schneider and Patricia A. Schneider, 4223 Tangier Street.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Bill Jackson, what's the cost going to be per month?
Approximately $1,800 for all facilities.
What did you say?
It's going to be $1,800 approximately for all facilities. Currently, we pay $3,200.
Individual cost. Or is this a gift?
It's quoted by address. Comcast quoted as services by facility.
Okay. So for the residents here, we're buying a pick and a poke. We don't know what they're going to charge us.
I have a spreadsheet of exactly what the quote is.
Bill, the charges are specifically spelled out.
It's a bundled service, so it's a fixed 36-month contract.
It's $1,800 a month. That can be divided.
Go to the mic.
But we're going to be charged something. Who are we going to pay?
You aren't going to be charged. This is for the district.
This is the district.
The district will pay all of it.
Telephone service, yes, sir, and television, internet, and phone service.
And this is just the goodness of their heart. They're going to pay this.
This is district facilities only.
This isn't
For
asking,
district facilities on it. We can do whatever we want.
yes, sir. Residential is completely separate.
Need to say no more.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tom Costi, Manor Hill. Is this feed also going to be for the TV system at the clubhouse?
Yes, sir.
So no more NFL ticket at the clubhouse, is that correct?
That's correct.
I'd like to, I would say that's correct. I don't believe Comcast offers NFL ticket. I'll let David Spork speak to that if he's here.
We don't have the NFL ticket now.
We don't?
No.
On Monday nights, we don't have the NFL ticket?
I don't think
We do
currently we
not.
have NFL ticket.
We have DirecTV service, but we don't have the NFL package.
None of the, okay. Thank you.
Back to the board.
What is the length of the contract or the agreement?
36 months.
And what clause do you have in there that if we're not happy?
Cancellation can be
There's
any
a
time, and they'll have a
cancellation policy?
Yes, sir. Yeah, cancellation fee for a small
Okay,
fee.
but the contract is for 3 years.
Yes, sir.
No penalty on the cancellation?
There is a penalty of $199, I believe, per facility.
Okay. Call the roll.
Supervisor Halbig.
Yes.
Supervisor Hulbert.
Yes.
Supervisor Miller.
Yes.
President McCullough.
Yes. Need a motion to approve resolution number 2015-05/29-14, a resolution of the Sun and Lake of Sebring Improvement District to approve the hiring of legal defense counsel for Supervisor Halbig pursuant to District Resolution 09-10 and 09-67.
So moved.
Second. I have to file this Form 8B because this is for my benefit, and I got it.
Does it look okay? Make sure it's all right.
For the benefit of the public, Michael, you want to read your letter that you sent to the Board of Supervisors dated May 22nd?
Basically, Supervisors Halbig and Miller are requesting the Board of Supervisors approve the hiring of separate attorneys to represent them in regard to complaints filed by Public Works Director Greg Griffin. The formal requests are attached, which you have. The three complaints are dated October 20th, 14, October 23rd, and October 28th of this year, and are also attached in the agenda item, and that Mr. Griffin is represented by counsel from the law firm of Becker and Holyokoff. I can't say that.
I think you meant to say April for the latter two dates.
I'm sorry, it's April 23rd and April 28th. I stand corrected. Mr. McClure is here to give you some background on, as you may need it, with regard to the representation as outlined in Resolutions 910 and 967. He's also available to discuss the range of options that you have with regard to the complaints.
I got a couple questions before we get into that. So can Mr. Halbig vote on this resolution?
No.
Can Mr. Miller vote on his resolution?
Not on his, no.
Can Mr. Miller vote on Mr. Halbig's resolution?
Yes, and vice versa.
What is the protocol, excuse me, Kurt, what is the protocol on the number of votes needed in this situation?
Researching the matter, the issue is this. We have 4 supervisors. You have to have a quorum to vote and a majority of the quorum to approve. If 4 supervisors are present as a quorum, then 3 votes would be required to approve. On the other hand, if a supervisor is disqualified from voting by virtue of the conflict of interest, as we have here, the remaining 3, the question is whether the remaining 3 would constitute the quorum, and 2 of the 3 being the majority of the quorum required to pass, or would all 3 be required to pass? The district had previously had a policy where where 3 votes were required to pass anything. That was modified subsequently to a majority of the quorum, as is the case with Robert's Rules of Order. In researching this issue, I found no Florida case on point. I did find some out-of-state cases, and those cases all said that if a member is disqualified from voting, then the quorum is determined by the remaining members who are eligible to vote. In other words, in this case, there would be 3 members constituting a quorum of the board, and a majority of that quorum would be required to pass the vote. So it would require 2 of the 3 voting people left to vote by my research. Okay?
The reason I asked about Mr. Miller is that there's somewhat of a conflict of interest in my mind. Obviously, he's interested in Mr. Halbig's resolution, and Mr. Halbig would be interested in Mr. Miller's resolution.
While I can't disagree with that, at the same time, neither are required to vote in a positive manner for the other. They're allowed to vote on matters that come before the board. This is a matter coming before the board. While it's I assume what you're alluding to would be what's good for the goose is good for the gander type thing. But I'm not aware of a legal conflict that would exist.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and take the lead on this then?
I believe that, and likely most everybody in the room is aware of the situation at this point, but as summarized by Mr. Wright, a complaint has been made. The issue is legal representation. That's what has been requested. There are 2 district resolutions on point. One is 0910 and the other is 09-67. Just simply put, 0910 allows for legal representation to defend any and all civil actions arising from a complaint for damages or injuries suffered as a result of an action arising out of and in the scope of a person's employment or function unless they acted in bad faith or with malicious purpose, etc. So, in a nutshell, Supervisor Halbig is a supervisor, has been performing duties, as has Supervisor Miller. There have been some complaints about improprieties regarding violations, I believe, district policy in this case, requiring a supervisor to deal directly with the general manager, not with the employee personally. And so that is the biggest part of the issue before us today, as well as some other allegations in the complaint filed. So while there are issues potentially of, well, has this yet risen to the level of defense, I think out of a matter of caution, and understandably so, the supervisors are in a difficult position because the 09-67 requires that a request for legal representation be made within a short period of time. I can't remember if it's 10 or 14 days of the becoming aware of the complaint. So that there really is no option that they have except to file the request for representation. They are before us today, as I understand it, requesting representation and also requesting representation be provided as of the date that they retained counsel. The 09-67 has a bit of a conflict in it there where it says that written approval by the Board of Supervisors is required to undertake the representation, and any representation provided by the district shall not be retroactive in nature, but shall only apply from the date of approval by the supervisors forward. The difficulty that I see with this provision, and perhaps each of you can envision yourself in the same circumstance, is that in a case as we have before us now, there's been an allegation that is required to be defended against. Counsel is required to be retained, and it might be some period of time before it actually gets before the board to be heard. And during that delay, there are still matters that need to be addressed by legal counsel, and the clock is running. So it works to the detriment, of course, of the person being identified. And not only that, it's also, in my opinion, a catch-22 to say, okay, here's an allegation of wrongdoing, and you're required to present to the board the legal fee agreement with the attorney, but you can't get that fee agreement without seeing an attorney. So when you go see the attorney, the clock starts ticking, and so you're already running up legal fees before you can even get the agreement to present to the board to have the board approve. So I can see the basis for the request to backdate the representation until they were required to actually consult with, I'm sorry, to the date they were required to consult with their attorney. So as I understand the issue before the board now, that's kind of the background. This is the basis for the district's representation is the identification resolution that exists as modified by 0967. The issue that has been requested is that as relates to each individual supervisor, that the board waive the provision that states that it is from the date of approval forward, and instead to backdate that from the date of retention of counsel forward. I believe you could do that with that individual waiver with respect to each supervisor's request and vote on that separately as relates to each supervisor, if that is the board's desire. So does everybody understand what I'm saying in that regard?
John, along those lines, this retroactive situation is complicated by the fact that there have been several postponements of board meetings, and that's a major issue here. Because if I understand it correctly, those letters were in by May 5th. There was a May 8th meeting scheduled that was canceled. May 15th meeting was canceled, and then there was also a request to move this up to June 12th. So I consider that as extenuating circumstances.
I would address even further that, as stated by Mr. Wright in his memorandum, Mr. Brian Koji, who is a labor law attorney, has been engaged in an effort to informally work a potential settlement in this matter. And of course, Mr. Koji, number one, he doesn't work for anything. The district's paying him. But more importantly, he's dealing directly with counsel for the individuals here, and that's by the hour. That clock is ticking. And so if we're trying to informally settle the matter, the gentlemen that are represented are accruing legal fees, but in an unprotected fashion as the matter goes forward. And the more it went forward, as we tried to get it settled, the more the clock's running, and the more exposed they are to potential legal expenditures without some approval of indemnification. And now, I would point out for everybody here, the indemnification is not unlimited, number one. The district can set limits on the amount of the representation it will expend money for. That's in the resolution. Number two, you have to approve the fee agreements so that you can review the hourly rates to be submitted and approved, and you can determine in whether or not you're willing to pay that amount of an hourly rate. I can see where a supervisor could say, well, I want only the very best, and hire some attorney that is a $500-600 an hour attorney. So that's within your discretion as well. And then finally, there's also the issue that depending on how the matter is finally resolved, it could lead to a finding of fault on the part of the supervisor, which might require a complete repayment of the legal fees provided. That too is a possibility. So that is the general background that I would offer. If there is to be a motion, I believe it should be to waive the provisions contained in paragraph 2F of Resolution 09-9067, I apologize, 0967, and to provide the representation from the date of retention of counsel, and then to approve, of course, the request for representation. Would be, I believe, an appropriate motion. With respect to the vote, Supervisor Halbig is before the board first, and so the board would vote on his motion. I believe that all three of you, the remaining supervisors, are entitled to vote on that, and then because that does not inure to Supervisor Miller's personal gain or benefit, and then vice versa, when Supervisor Miller comes up, I believe Supervisor Halbig would be allowed to vote on that too. This is, I believe, routinely the way governmental bodies have to handle conflicts such as this as they come before the board.
John, when do you feel is appropriate to make the motion regarding the waiver of that part of 0967?
Well, I believe that the motion should be made in conjunction with the request for representation. So, in other words, the motion should be to approve the request for representation and to modify 0967 paragraph 2F by allowing representation from the date of retention of counsel.
Well, then I'll amend my motion that I previously said to include that particular phrase.
Okay.
Allison, can we do it that way?
Yes, sir. You'll need a second on that amendment. We'll need to vote on that amendment exclusively, and then the motion as amended will come back for you for approval too. So there'll be two votes if you amend.
Or we could just simply withdraw your original motion second, and that would be your motion before the board. One vote that way.
I'll second it.
Well, I second it, so
did you?
I'll approve the second.
Okay.
So they withdrew the motion?
I'm not sure. Was your intention to withdraw the motion and then make a new motion along the lines we talked about, or is your intention to have a motion and then an amendment and vote on the amendment and then the motion?
Whatever works.
Withdraw.
Withdraw, please. That works much better.
I'll withdraw it.
Okay.
I withdraw the second.
All right. And Supervisor Miller, then, do you make the motion along the lines that previously discussed?
I do.
And is that
I second that.
I think we're ready for public discussions, or discussion amongst the board first and then the public.
Okay, I've just got a short statement to make, and there are numerous points I'd like to make on the issue, but my attorney and I will present my response at the appropriate time, which is not today. This whole situation unfolded on April the 23rd when the district received a request for public records, including all correspondence from supervisors, staff, and golf operations. Shortly after, I was given a copy of 3 complaints filed by Greg Griffin. The complaints were given to me on April the 30th. Prior to then, I had not seen the complaints. Mr. Griffin has secured an attorney to represent him. That attorney requested the public records. Everyone knows when an attorney is engaged on the opposed side for your own protection, you have no choice but to retain counsel. The district, by resolution, provides assistance for their supervisors in regard to support and payment for legal defense of the board. That is what I'm asking the board to approve. No supervisor has ever been denied this right. It is also my assumption that the legal reimbursement will begin May the 4th. I had no control over the postponement of the May 8th and May 22nd meeting. My request would have been submitted at the May 8th meeting. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Part of this resolution is, if we approve it, that we are basically approving whatever happens. I mean, you mentioned about legal fees and cost of legal fees, and how do we deal with appropriate pricing and a total amount? I mean, this is like approving a sealed box, and we don't know what's inside until we open it. So how do we deal with that?
Well, the first thing you look at is the fee agreement to determine whether or not, in your opinion, the hourly rate is sufficient or not too exorbitant is a better way to put it.
Well, let's stop right there. I have not seen any fee schedules at all. I don't know if anybody else have. You seen?
Oh, they were submitted with our letters.
No, I don't think we had Mr. Halvick's.
Okay.
So you have a fee agreement to present?
You have mine, and it wasn't included in this.
It should have been.
It should have been.
Because of that very issue.
Right.
Okay. So how do we deal with Mr. Halbig, which is who we're talking about right now?
Do you know what the hourly rate is, Mr. Halbig?
No, because it's variable, really. He said his normal rate is $500 an hour, but that can be reduced based upon discussions between that. And I know that normally when the district secures an attorney, John normally doesn't handle any of the litigations. We always try to go out and find the best guy for the job, and we never worry about necessarily fee schedules or anything like that. So I don't know what this is, but I can get that. I can get a letter and that outlines the fee schedule and all the other costs involved from my attorney. I was not asked to provide that.
I believe, I'm not trying to cause trouble, but I think that in the resolution it does require a fee agreement be presented somewhere. Pretty sure it does. For that reason, for the hourly rate. Mr. Miller's fee agreement, as I understand it, is $200 an hour, I think is what it was.
Yeah, $200 per hour.
So,
plus a retainer.
Yeah.
$1,000 retainer.
So, I'll let the board discuss that. I don't know what else to say. If there's to be, I suppose you could limit your agreement to reimburse on a certain number dollars per hour, and anything over that, if Mr. Halbig chose to retain an attorney that was far more expensive, would be his to pay, or you could compromise in some other way.
I think I might have that document that you need.
Okay, sir.
What's the average local lawyer fee? Do you have any idea what that would be?
That varies considerably. I would say I've seen $3.50 an hour, depending on the nature of the matter to be undertaken. I would say an average rate is for litigation type matters is probably $2.50 an hour. That's just my guess, but I believe that's pretty close.
My only concern is this is just like an open book. Who knows where this is going? I mean, this is a fairly simple complaint that we've received. And in 30 days, they haven't been able to resolve it. I'm just concerned that this thing goes on for 60, 90 days, and it just gets way out of hand financially. I mean, we're talking about spending these people's money here, and
Well, there is an argument that this thing has been delayed by the district for all this length of time.
I understand that, but also the lawyers have been talking and trying to resolve this in that period of time as well. You got any comments, Dick?
Yeah, this whole issue has been driven by the charges, and basically all the actions taken have been to protect. Mr. Halbeck has protect himself against these charges. This is driven by factors outside of his ability to control them. So we're going through a process. There's precedent for this process, and there's never, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, there's never been a case in Sun and Lake when a supervisor in this situation hadn't been afforded the courtesy of the defense.
I'm unaware of any circumstance.
I don't think we're challenging that. We're just discussing the fee rate right now.
Well, I'm trying to point out to you that events in this situation, this process, are beyond Mr. Halbert's control.
I'm not saying they aren't.
Well, you made the comment about it can go on and on and on. It doesn't have to go on and on and on.
I know this, that Mr. Koji has been making every effort to get it settled quickly. I'm sure of that. There are complicating factors. So.
Do you have any thoughts or comments? No?
The document provided to me for representation by the firm retained by Mr. Halbig, from my review of it, doesn't have an hourly rate spelled out. Is there some other page that contains that?
Or she set a cap and have them come back.
I'll do that. Here's one option that the board has, and that is to
let's put a cap on it.
Well, you can put a cap on two things. You can put a cap on the hourly rate, and you can put a cap on the total expenditures. I mean, that's going to be up to you, but that would be a reasonable thing to do, I believe.
So if you go with the total expenditures, what would be a reasonable cap? I have no idea what that would be.
Well, let's put it this way: if you approve $300 an hour, for example, it takes only 3 hours to be up to $900, close to $1,000, in other words, and so. I'm just going to suggest if you want it to come back to you after expenditure of a certain amount of money, you might say $10,000, then that would be, in my opinion, a not unreasonable cap. I don't like to be the one sitting here dictating these numbers, but...
Well, I will admit, 10,000 was kind of the number I had in my head, but do you have a number?
I was thinking $300 an hour cap.
Oh, okay. You're thinking hourly, we're thinking total.
Yeah.
The document provided to me by Mr. Halbig, and we would need to retain a copy of this for the record, and I'll provide it to you, is Mr. Canella's rate is $500 an hour. Other attorneys in their firm are $300 for junior associates to $970 per hour for the most senior attorneys. Ooh. So, maybe I can get a job there. I don't know, but that's what's in the document. He does say that.
Can we approach this in terms of approving or not approving the resolution in terms of the waiver and the legal counsel, and come back at the next meeting and discuss the amount of money and the caps, if there's going to be any caps or whatever? Can we do it that way or not?
No. I wouldn't recommend it.
You would not?
No, I would not. I would think that if for instance, the total amount spent exceeded the amount which you approved, you can always come back to the board and justify additional expenditures, and the board can approve that. But, that would be on a case-by-case determination.
Kurt, why don't we put a cap on it of $10,000? Give it 30 days to see what happens, and then go from there.
Well, quite a bit of this delay wasn't by Koji. It was waiting for information from the opposed side too, and time marches on. I don't know.
Well, fortunately, if you're billing by the hour, if you're just simply waiting on them to respond, you're not billing anything, hopefully. But once they respond, then of course you would be back on the clock. So some of that delay isn't really billable time; it's simply waiting for response time. And I honestly have no idea what the number of hours expended thus far are. I'm clueless.
So I guess if we want, Mr. Hulbert suggested we review a cap.
You need.
So
two things. With respect to with where you're going here, we have Mr. Miller's motion. We have a second. Now we're discussing it. It's clear from the discussion that an additional amendment will be required,
right.
And that amendment would be, in my opinion, approval of the hourly rate and approval of the expenditure cap. Those two things are going to be necessary to have a meaningful representation resolution.
Okay. So one of us has to pick the hourly rate and the cap, that's what you're saying.
Well, the board is the one that's going to vote on it, so you can discuss amongst yourselves what you deem to be an appropriate hourly rate and a cap.
Are we doing that at this time?
Yeah.
Or are we doing this after public comment?
Well, if the public has no idea what to comment on if they don't know what you've chosen.
Well, you got a resolution on the table right now.
You do, but again, you don't have any idea what the hourly rate is or the cap amount.
Well, I'll just say I have a vested interest in this, obviously. So I don't even know if I can vote on that particular part. But I will say this, that nothing in any of these resolutions or protocols or anything else says that you can't pick this guy or that guy or that guy. And that's essentially what you're doing by capping it.
John, I can never remember having this conversation when we go outside to fight, like the Severino case or something like that. We always go to the best guy that we can find. And I can never remember a conversation like this in those cases.
All right.
Why is it brought up in this case?
I am simply reading from the resolution to the board. Okay, these are your policies, your resolutions. I didn't make any of this up. It's all right here. It says that the board has to approve the fee agreement, and the reason you approve the fee agreement is because of the expenditure of district funds for an hourly rate, and it also says you can approve a cap. That's all before the board, your policies.
Can we do this? Can we have public comment and let them comment on whether they would like us to have a cap on either hourly rate or total amount spent?
It's all within your discretion, sir.
All right. Public comment. Take a number.
I sit here listening to this. Bill Jackson, by the way. And I just shake my head. I don't know how long many of you have been here. I've been here over 10 years. And I remember this place was run by crooks and people were dishonest. In fact, we got one of them in the prison right now. And these two men sitting up there, who you're haggling over, are two of the primary individuals who brought this around to where we are, the district, right now. For 3 or 4 years, we haven't had an increase in our assessments. The district is just streaming along, and we want to argue over nickels. I have a way to solve this. I don't like to see unhappy employees. Unless you guys have taken him in a corner and beat him up, I think the answer to this, and it settles all the lawyer things too, make a motion to fire him right now. You do not want people on here. Yeah, I know you're waiting to get in. Wait a minute. You want people on here that go along with this. If he's unhappy with this place and the money he makes, I'm unhappy with him. I haven't liked the way he handled things with me. But it was minor. And if you fire him, all of you, and if he wants to sue, let him sue. You'll have one attorney to represent you all, and you will have helped the man out by getting rid of a dissatisfied employee. I don't see how you can put up with him over the years when he will sue the district or kick at the various people here for nothing. I don't know. Did someone say something that hurt his feelings? Well, I've had my ass kicked as an employee for many times. And I never got up where I had to argue with people, because they had to put my ass in the basket and send me out of there. I suggest you find a basket for him and put him in here, and before this meeting is over, fire him.
Stan Paralikas. Remember me, Dave? Dave, I'm asking you to resign immediately. Your actions have put us in the newspaper again. You're asking us to pay for your lawyer because of your personal actions. Your needing a lawyer is not because of your position as a board of supervisor. You're asking for a lawyer because of your errant behavior, which has been proven in the past, to only put Southern Lake once again in a bad light to the Highlands County. We're the laughingstock of Highlands County. If you can't control your behavior, that's a personal issue. Don't go asking us to pay for your lawyer. And as far as paying for your lawyer, saying a supervisor has never been denied the request before, that's once again that's the way we have always done it. Every time we do something, because that's the way we have always done it, it just solidifies the old boy network of what sits up there. This has to end. You don't need a lawyer. Do you understand me? You don't need a lawyer. It's your personal behavior. If you need a lawyer, don't ask us for an open-ended check. Theoretically, the way it's written, you're asking for a lawyer that could bankrupt. Theoretically, I'm not saying it would, but theoretically, you're asking for a blank check to be represented. Now, every time a supervisor gets accused of something, and it is the result of their actions as a member on the board because of a way they voted or a conflict of interest or anything else like that, I understand if they're needing a lawyer because of a lawsuit. But just to defend your personal character, that's ridiculous. It's your personal character that keeps putting Southern Lake in the newspaper. And Gary Pinnell is having a field day with this. Now, I suggest, and I'm asking you, and I wish everybody would ask you, to step down finally once and for all. We can't have this anymore.
I will not step down. I do my job as best I can. That information that was posted on our website and given to the newspaper was not put up there by me. It was put up there by our administration. The last situation that this happened, nothing except the resolution came before this board. Thank you.
I respect you saying you will not step down. I'm just putting in my request that you step down. And I hope to encourage everybody else to speak up. You can stay on as long as you want, but I'm tired of the board picking my pocket and the pocket of every resident that pays taxes in Sun and Lake. We don't need to be paying for your lawyers. We have a labor attorney to handle the affairs internally, and for you to go out above and beyond what he hasn't even been able to do anything yet. Only when he has given up should you be asking for a lawyer. If you need a lawyer, for your own personal protection of your assets, not your reputation. Thank you.
Tom Costi, resident of Sun Lake. I would just like to say that over the past 8 years since I've been here, I've worked quite closely with just about every supervisor that's up here. I worked through at least 2 election cycles in support of Mr. Miller to help him get on the board. I had met him downtown at the county when we had found that there was several lawsuits filed by the local POA against the district. The district had filed a lawsuit against the county. The county was in the process of hearing a complaint about the way the voting system was set up here. And over a period of about 1.5 years, during which time I met Mr. Helbig, who had been fighting tirelessly for the previous couple of years for the 3rd popularly elected seat in Sun Lake in order to provide more input by the residents of Sun Lake instead of the corporate interests that were here at that time. These 2 gentlemen have spent an awful lot of their personal, private time. They're both successful businessmen that are used to seeing how things are done in the private sector. And that might make them look a little bit differently about the actions of an employee based on what they experienced in their careers, both of which were quite successful. I'm not trying to render a judgment in any way as to what transpired or what was said, but keep in mind, the only thing that has come out so far is one person's impression of those conversations. You haven't seen one word from either of these 2 gentlemen about what transpired in these complaints that were filed by an employee who, for whatever reason, was obviously disgruntled. There are probably several things that have happened over the last 6 months that may have caused this, but that's yet to come out. There has been no investigation here. All we've seen is an article in the paper. And I might even add that the paper never took, as far as I know, the paper never even exercised the opportunity to contact either one of these gentlemen to find out what their side of the story was. They simply took what was provided to them by the district manager, or the general manager, as being gospel. This investigation is yet to take place. My understanding, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the state sets a limit on what a political organization within the state, and this is one, there's a limit on what total damages can be awarded and what total damages can even be sued for against a public body. The other thing that's in those state statutes is that if, after the investigation, the gentlemen are found guilty and funds have been expended on their behalf, they have to pay it back. So I've been through this a couple of times on several of the lawsuits that have taken place. I don't even understand why this is before the board today. We had a resolution, it's 0910, that said that this was our policy, that we were going to defend our supervisors. And by the way, that's the same language that's in every one of the homeowner association articles of incorporation that I'm aware of here in Sun Lake. We've got the same thing. Directors and officers are defended by the organization if they're charged with violating anything. I mean, to say that we're going to try to decide how much we're going to spend on it because we got one employee who doesn't like the fact that he got looked at cross-eyed. Maybe it was because he wasn't in town when all this work was going on. Maybe he was off doing something else that had nothing to do with the district. Could be. I don't know. But at any rate, I just feel as though this thing ought to be a slam dunk at this point. And if at the end that it's determined that these guys did something wrong, the money has to be reimbursed. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Donna Stroll. I live in Manor Hill, and I have been a resident for about 14, 15 years. I have watched the boards go from absolutely being their own rule and order to this board who does think about us. I have been through seeing a few, very few, who have been so against the board that I don't care what they did, they found fault in it. But I think that Dave and Dick both are working for us. I think we should give them our total support, and I think we should pay for their legal fees, because let me tell you one thing, I was president of the Manor Hill Association, and you have to have liability insurance because unfortunately there are so crazy people in this world. But as far as them, I think they did everything for us, and I think we ought to support them. Thank you.
Rusty Crino, resident, and listening to the situation this morning, I think you have a two-tier problem. Number one problem in addressing, Mr. Chairman, is that you've got to ask, was their actions, what they did, the two supervisors, was it within the scope and the best interest of this district? Okay? That's the first thing you've got to answer, is to do that. The second, the other, and also is, if this is a personal nature, then this shouldn't even be taken into consideration. But if they're acting within the scope and the best interest of our district, then I say, by all means. The second thing that we need to look at after we settle that question is the amount of money that we pay the attorneys. Now, what is reasonable? That's up in the air. That's up to your discretion as to what is reasonable. But anything over the excess of reasonable, then I think it should probably come out of the pocketbook of whoever is being involved. But that's up to you to determine. The basic problem here today is for you to settle was, did these gentlemen act in the scope of their business and their position in the best interest of our district? You see, let me give you a little history. One time we paid for the legal fee of a gentleman, and it was not in the scope for this of this district, and it was not in the best interest, and we paid for his legal fees, and that left the sore taste in my mouth. But if you can answer, did they do it? Did they act in the best interest of this district and in the scope of the business of their line of duty of representing us? And I have no problems with that. Thank you.
Harry Terrell, President Board President, Manor Hill. I think it all comes down to, I think I started this whole thing back about a year ago. When there was a water issue, I was getting complaints from the people on Sunrise, on Manor and Monza, all for water issues in the drainage ditches. I brought this up at a board meeting. A gentleman and supervisor informed me that I didn't know what I was talking about. By the way, this is all on recording. He made the comment at that time that he had been doing this for 30 plus years. Which my comment was, well, I got my degree in 1967 and been in it since 61. Got a lot of snickers out of the board members at that particular time. By the way, I'm still working on the issue. The next issue was the road work on Monza. I called and complained because it was not being done right. Basically, the left hand didn't have any idea what the right hand was doing. It was being done by county employees, didn't even know how to run the equipment. There was nobody there on site, whether it be Sun and Lake, to inspect by ruling, they should be inspecting the trucks as they come in for temp. They should have actually had, the inspection of the trucks coming in, the temp of the material going down, checking the temps of the material during placement, depth of placement, pitch, etc. This was not being done by any employee, of which, to me, Greg should have been in charge at that time, or had somebody there doing it. He didn't. So that, and now the next was Sun and Lake Boulevard. Now, Greg was involved in this. Sun and Lake Boulevard, as they were redoing that one, a private contractor, they were placing blacktop in the rain. That is definitely a no-no. Greg did challenge that one, and he got on somebody over it. There was also a county inspector there, which is, again, he should be checking everything. He didn't get out of the truck, especially during the rain. He was going to get wet. The last one is the sewer repair. Okay, I saw them opening the hole up. By OSHA, in the type of material they were in, it's a 3-to-1. The hole was not a 3-to-1. If I'd have called OSHA, there'd have been a big fine to Sun and Lake. Instead, I challenged the guy that was there. I think he's called Gator. He got all over my head, and as easygoing as I am, I came right back at him, which I necessarily shouldn't have done, but I did. Okay, bad words, like I said, were passed between both. Contacted Greg, and I wanted copies of the compaction report, because what they had for material was not compactable. It didn't have inspections on it. They just brought material in. And again, that's rulings. They turn around, and he did give me compaction reports later. It was done with a plate compactor. I watched them compact it. They were compacting with the plate compactor deeper than they're supposed to. And actually, what you can see out there right now, the road has sunk again. And I didn't receive any of the reports on the blacktop again. I think there's I guess what I'm saying is this whole thing has probably been created originally by me, and I think the whole thing just needs to be dropped. I'm certain Dave probably said some things that he shouldn't have. We all do. But I think it happens, and let it go. Forget this whole thing. And that's my statement.
Hi, Jerry Van Oostrom, resident. I don't think we're here to try the case today. I think we're just trying to decide whether or not we should cover the legal fees of Mr. Halbeck and Mr. Miller. Tom Costi said pretty much a lot of what I believed in, and I think he was very eloquent. In my opinion, based on observations and direct contact with Supervisors Halbeck and Miller, I find their character beyond reproach. These gentlemen are terrific assets to Sun and Lake. I respect their common sense, willingness, and desire to not only get involved solving problems, but to work towards solving issues in an equitable and timely fashion. These men take time away from their families and leisure time to serve our community. If there was an election tomorrow, I'd be proud to check both their names for re-election. I therefore urge the board to vote in favor of paying their outside legal fees without any limitations.
Frank Goliami, resident. I sat on that board for 5 years, so I know what you guys are going through. But, the duties of a supervisor are very clearly defined. Okay. Let me read some of those right from the policy manual. The first one. I'm half blind. Policy-making functions. A board is responsible for policy-making. Policies are principles established by the board to chart a course of action. Executive function. The board selects a general manager to operate the district in accordance with district policies.
As far as I can see, we have a very weak general manager, okay? He applies to the wishes of the board where he needs to be discussing things with the boards. If they're not going the way they're supposed to be, he's supposed to be arguing in favor of the employees. No member of the board shall give direction to any district employee unless specifically authorized by motion of the board at a duly constituted meeting or by consensus of board members. No district employee shall act on direction by a board member unless such specifically authorized as per previous sentence. District employees shall report any violation of this policy to the general manager. And the last one is direct district code of ethics for board of supervisor members. One of the things you do not do, in addition to the statutory requirements, board of supervisor members are to refrain from the following conduct: giving direction to district employees or contractors. As far as I can see, Mr. Griffin's been here, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. He was hired as a utility director. I think he's done everything but sweep the floors. Okay? He's taken on a tremendous job, and he's cleaned all the ponds, he's cleaned the scrubs, he's done so much work. Has he done some things wrong? Probably. I'd like to see the perfect guy stand up here that's never made a mistake. Okay? Now, the situation with paying our lawyer fees, okay? There's a resolution that we passed when I was on the board. And yes, it says that we pay the lawyer fees in case of a lawsuit, but if the individual is found to be at fault or create a situation himself, then we could recoup those fees, even if we have to go to court for it. I think everybody understands that. There's a lot of frivolous lawsuits that are filed, and that's what that protection is for the frivolous lawsuits. It's not for something, if a supervisor did something wrong, then he needs to take the blame for it. And, I feel for you guys because I've been there. But that's the situation, okay? We have a situation here where an employee has been browbeaten by a supervisor. It's not the first time, okay? If it happens once in an event, if it happens more than once, then we have a problem. Okay? And I guess that's all I have to say. Let's look at it in an objective manner, what exactly has happened, and let's see what the individual that's being crucified, what he's done for this district. Okay? And let's also look at the general manager, what we're paying him and what kind of performance we get from him. Thank you. By the way, it's nice to see you, Mr. Jackson.
Joe Ack for the record. First off, before you start my clock there, Herb, I'd like to ask the attorney a question. What we're talking about and debating now, is this strictly for Dave or is this going to be for Dix as well?
Currently, the motion before the board is for Mr. Halbig. Mr. Miller's motion has yet to be considered.
Well, why go into Dix there? You're going to be doing the same thing we're doing now, as well as when it comes down to him as well. But the question is, though, was Dave right by going out there? One person spoke for his resignation. Well, that's his opinion. Mine, I don't let people know what my opinion is until I get to the microphone. Now, Board of Supervisors, you have a choice. You can make a decision right now. You are the ones that control what goes on in Sun and Lake over the general manager. You can make a motion today for the general manager to fire Mr. Griffith. And Mr. Griffith, 6 months ago, I had messages sent to you and put in the call to you to call me, and I'm still waiting for the call. I don't know you, I've never met you, but you wouldn't work for me. Anyway, you can instruct Michael Wright to fire Griffith today. And if he don't, you have the authority and the right to fire Michael Wright. And you could also withhold that 6 months pay that you would be paying him and let him sue the district for it. The thing that I'm concerned about is there's a resolution been passed, and I think it was brought up, that you are entitled to an attorney if so deemed it. And that happened back 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know too much about what's been going on with the paper, but I do see we do have a journalist here today, because I don't come to the meetings anymore. And this probably I won't be back again. But when it comes down to this thing here, you're spending money, but the thing of it is, Dave, like I told you outside, and you told me, you called Michael Wright and told him about it. Michael would not go down to see what was going on. Michael done the same thing at the county before he got fired from there. When you all hired Michael Wright here, I was strictly against it anyway at that time. And I'm still against it. You need to fire him, both of those two. That's all I got to say.
Ron Hoffbauer, a resident. I was also going to ask Greg if he had any experience with management or maintenance of a golf course. Apparently not. So why do they let him go out and do anything on the golf course when we're paying a management group a lot of money to manage and maintain those courses? Now, the 3 projects that I'm aware of that Greg, I think, was in charge of, the memorial monument went over budget by like 25%. The tree plantings went over by 25 or 30%. The tennis courts went over the estimated $30,000, went over by over 1,000%. And why is he still around?
Hi, Len Roberts. I'm a resident here. One thing I'd like to say is the board should not, at this time, in my opinion, we should not be putting any limits on the money or anything else. That should be something they should come up with after this is over with, if they want. That's because anybody that runs for board knows what they're up against and what they're not up against. So I think we just ought to provide the support that we said we would for them, and then afterwards, they can put restrictions of $300 an hour or $10,000 or whatever, but this is the wrong time to be trying to say that after the fact that we've got a couple lawsuits going on here. I think they should be provided the support that they thought they had. The other thing is, too, we need to get this thing done, and done pretty quick, because, let's face it, we always don't get what we want. I was up here and I lost the thing, but I'll tell you what, I don't hold a grudge against anybody on this board. And I think they've done a great job for the district, and I don't want to see, if we ever vote against this resolution, you'll never get anybody to run for the board worth their salt, okay? And so if you want anarchy and stuff, that's what you're going to get. Thank you.
All righty, back to the board. All right. Why don't we just...
Let
got
me
a
just
comment?
read this. Yes, just a brief comment. The resolution states that legal representation may be obtained either by appointment by the district, in which case legal counsel would be paid directly by the district, which we've never done and probably don't want to get into that, or B, may retain legal counsel chosen by the indemnities, the individuals, in which case the district shall have the right to, not the requirement to, the right to, approve in advance any agreement for legal fees or disbursements, or and to pay all or part of the legal fees, costs, and other disbursements, and to set a maximum for legal fees, costs, and other disbursements. So I'm simply pointing out to the board that it does say you have the right to. It is not the absolute unmitigated requirement to.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is just vote on the resolution as it's stated. Either we're going to support them or we're not going to support them, and worry about the finances at a later date.
That is a privilege of the board.
Thank you. Any more comments on the board? Call the roll.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
President McCullough?
Yes. Need a motion to approve Resolution 2015-05/29-15, a resolution of the Sun and Lake of Sebring Improvement District to approve the hiring of legal counsel for Supervisor Miller pursuant to District Resolution 09-10 and 09-67.
As well as a waiver, sir, of the provision under paragraph 2F of 09-67 and allow representation backdated to the date of retention of counsel.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Miller, you got any comments?
Yes, I also filled out a Form 8B, which covers the conflict of interest situation in this. I have a prepared statement, which I will pass out, but will not read. I think we've had enough discussion. There's not much change. Allison, you read this into the record? Doesn't have to be read today.
You mean, do you wish for her simply to append that to the record, sir, then post that on the website as part of the minutes?
Whatever. Well, yeah, I want it as part of the official record.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'll simply say that I've complied with the requirements under Resolution 0910 and 0967, and I'll further state that all of these issues and conflicts have been in the context of my duties as a duly elected supervisor of Sun and Lake, and that's about it.
I'd like to make one comment. A couple of people in public comment have said this is a lawsuit. We're not at that point yet. Am I correct? We strictly have a complaint filed, and that's all it is.
It's an employee complaint.
Yes.
Filed with the district. It is not a file complaint in a court of law.
Now, we received 3 complaints against Mr. Halbig, right? Is that right?
Apparently.
Okay. Have we received a complaint against Mr. Miller?
There were allegations regarding Mr. Miller within the complaints against Mr. Halbig.
So, derogatory comments, basically.
Among other things, yes. I think there wasn't a derogatory comment. It was an allegation of a violation of Sunshine Law, which is a criminal offense. So, in essence, the allegation was made that he had committed what could be construed as a criminal offense or potentially subject to a civil fine.
Okay. Any board comment? No.
Well, no. Other than the fact that any comment to the fact that someone has violated Sunshine Law is pretty serious, as Mr. McClure has spoken, and I agree with the fact that he needs to be defended upon that unless it can be proven otherwise.
Public comment. Back to the board. Call the roll.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbert?
Yes.
President McCullough?
Yes. Do we have any add-on items?
No add-on items.
No?
No, sir.
Petitions and communications. I guess I'll start it for you.
We've already read
our last board meeting was April 24th, and on April 27th, we received a letter from Linda West concerning trees being planted on the golf course within her lot lines, if you want to call it that. Obviously, we didn't have a chance to discuss that letter because today is the first meeting we've had since then. And the trees in question have been chemically treated and had died. And so the district went in and replanted the trees. And that's kind of the emphasis of the letter. So go ahead, Tanya. You can continue on if you will.
Mrs. West, Linda West of 547 Pebble Beach Drive, has written 2 communications to the Board of Supervisors directed to Mr. McCullough on April 27th, 2015. And then the second request, actually it was a communication written by Mrs. West, received by the district yesterday.
First of all, that first letter was sent to every supervisor, not just me. Every supervisor received that letter.
It was sent to every supervisor. It was just addressed to you in the citation. She has expressed her opinion on the trees to the Board of Supervisors, and if at this time, I don't know that she is asking any certain. I mean, she had numerous questions in her letter from the letter that we received yesterday.
Anybody have any
comments? At the board's discretion if they'd like to discuss it at this time.
Well, I believe also in the letter she made a flat statement that it wasn't true what was implied about their involvement with any of the trees. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
Can you repeat your statement?
Yeah, I read the letter, and among other things, she categorically denied any involvement with those trees.
She did.
Well, that wasn't spelled out, and that should be part of the record.
As far as I know, she wasn't accused of doing it. We just had the district. I think maybe Mr. Wright can fill us in, but basically, I think he filed a complaint. Property complaint with the county. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, I did. After you and I discussed it, I basically called the sheriff's office and said we've had apparently had someone come out and apply herbicide to 4 trees planted on the golf course. And the sheriff's office came out and wrote a report.
Okay.
You know, Michael, it's strange that you would do that. I've saw people out on the common area with bulldozers, and the police weren't called. And why would you call them for a situation like that when, in the past, we've had absolute destruction in common areas on a golf course, and the sheriff was not called. Just curious.
Well, in this particular case, I felt like there was a deliberate destruction of district property, and I'm not familiar with the other item you're quoting from.
Any board comment?
Were those trees actually on her property, or were they on the golf course property?
They were on the golf course property in her sight line of the golf course.
Yeah, I read the letter, and I was just curious as, by the time those trees grew up,
Well, obviously, there's no action to be taken here. It's just a matter of making it public that she gave us the letters, right?
Correct.
That's right.
Correct.
There is no public
There
comment.
is no public
if there's
comment
not
for
a
something
proposal
like this.
Before the board.
Sorry.
You can make public comment at the public comment section.
The very end of the meeting, we have general public comment. You can say whatever you'd like, but you can't right now. We also received a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Schneider, which has already been previously read. I assume we don't need to deal with that anymore. Next on the list is staff reports.
Wait, you had one other letter dated 13th of May.
Not
From
aware of that
Janice
one.
Reber.
Who?
Janice Reber.
I'm not aware of that one.
She's requesting bocce ball and shuffleboard courts.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll be brought up. Oh, I didn't see it. Well, that'll be brought up during the budget process then.
Well, explain what it is.
Well, I lost my agenda. Where'd it go? Where's that letter? You want to read the letter? Go ahead and read it.
From Janice Reber, it would be so nice to have bocce ball and shuffleboard courts for people who can no longer play golf.
Okay, thank you. Staff reports. Security. Any comments? General Counsel report, Mr. McClure.
Yes, sir. A very limited report. With respect to the litigation report, you'll note that mediation has been set for June 25th, 2015 in the Severino-Ayala litigation. So I would expect that to be a rather meaningful time. I know that both parties are trying to complete their discovery prior to that date to have meaningful mediation, but the actual deadline for completion of all discovery is September 1st, with expert disclosure and testimony to be completed by July 15th. So that case is moving forward. Judge Estrada has made it a priority of his to get that moving forward, given the fact it's been around a couple of years already. So that's, and the rest of the update with respect to the litigation report is relatively insignificant, dealing mostly, if not exclusively, with foreclosures. The foreclosure report itself has been provided and delivered to you. I don't know of any unusual matters, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to address those. But other than that, I have no further report at this time.
John, to begin with, Tanya, I appreciate you and Tanya doing this. It was included in the package, this Tanglewood impact fee question I had. So
yes, sir.
That answers my question.
Okay.
And there was also included a memorandum on purchasing limitations requirements.
Yes.
Okay. And in the last paragraph, I'm a little bit confused where it says you need no quotes for any job that is less than $10,000. And when I asked Tanya for the purchasing procedures, I was provided with I don't know how many pages of purchasing procedures. That's what I was given. But I understand these don't apply, that these are just...
We have a 3-page purchasing procedure that does address quotes. It's an internal procedure, and it's been around for quite some time, even from 15 years ago, of an internal policy. As far as I know, that is a policy that was not adopted as part of the purchasing policy by the board. It was an internal policy.
Do you use this policy?
We use that policy.
Well,
yes.
That's completely different than
But it's not a policy that has been adopted by the Board of Supervisors.
It was revised in 2013.
Correct.
Which is very recent.
Yes.
And in that policy, it has purchases from, there's some definition for purchases in excess of $500 and purchases from $2,500 to $10,000. And I'm sure it's done for internal control. But if we're not applying that, what do we, I'm a little bit confused because Mr. McClure said we don't have to do it because of some ordinance that has been written, but we have this internal document that sometimes it's been applied and sometimes it's not. I'm curious.
In the very near future, I'd like to address the purchasing manual and bring to the board a revised policy to be adopted in the very near future.
Yeah, the county, the county provides an awfully good guideline for that that part of our business. Do you have that? Do you have their?
I do not have their purchasing manual, but I can definitely get a copy of that. Yes.
I think you should.
Yes.
So are we applying this for internal control or not? I'm just curious.
The 3-page document that you speak of, we use that internally. Yes, sir. It has not been formally adopted by the Board of Supervisors, though.
Okay, because I know when the auditors get all over purchasing procedures.
Absolutely. They look at all of our procedures.
And if this was given to the auditor and he was comfortable with what we're doing, then we ought to apply it as if it's been approved by the board or not, I would think.
Yes, it is given to the auditors.
Okay, thank you.
General Manager's report.
Ms. Kennedy's handling it today.
The board has received the Golf Club, Restaurant, and Car Pack project updates by email on Tuesday, May 26th. Included in this update from David Ford are the golf course closure dates. Is there any questions regarding any of those, that email or the golf closures? Okay. I personally want to congratulate David Ford and Megan Bell for their team and their teams for their recent awards won by Sun and Lake at the Billy Casper Golf General Managers meeting. Those awards were emailed to you, and again, I just want to congratulate David, Megan, and his team. The Recreation Department is gearing up for their summer camps and the Independence Day celebration that will be held on Friday, July 3rd. The district has implemented a software through Tyler Technologies called Notify. And Notify is used in our utility department to call customers regarding late notices, cutoffs due to non-payment, general notifications, and more importantly, emergency situations and notifications. These messages are custom by each type of call, and we can control whether it's English or Spanish. That is one availability that we have. It can be also notifications to customers district-wide. It could be by streets. It could be by routes. And we hope that the customers will continue to provide their phone numbers to us in case of an emergency regarding water outages, water line breaks, or whatever the case may be. So this is a great asset to have right now that we not had the capability to do this before. Also, our district accountant and utility billing supervisor attended their first Tyler Technologies training in Atlanta, May 4th through May 6th. They attended different software tracks and learned from other government entities on new ideas and software capabilities. Lastly, bids are due for the property liability and workers' comp insurance on June 22nd, and for the signage and landscaping, bids are due June 30th.
I have a couple of questions for Mr. Wright. This is the first notification, by the way, to the board that we even had an RFP out for the signage. Perhaps our board president knew it, but it was not communicated to us. Mike, I wanted to check. We agreed that we would proceed with 3 out of, I think, the 21 or 22 signs. Is that correct?
I believe that was the motion of the board, yes.
And I go back to phase 1, where part of their duties, Bell people, were to provide construction drawings for the signs. Now, I guess my question is, we're getting those for the 3, but what about the other signs that we've all labored over?
I think we need further direction from the board on how you want to proceed with those, because the direction you gave the sign company, as I remember it, was to proceed with the 3. And you made no mention or comment on the other signs, nor did you choose a particular design had you wanted one.
I realize that, but I guess maybe it's an answer for John, but we had a scope of work for Phase 1, and that included preparation, but I don't remember that preparation of the construction drawings. I don't remember that was limited to the 3 signs that we want to do immediately. I mean, we obviously may be doing other signs at a later date, and John, I'm asking you, are they fulfilling their contract if we get the construction drawings for just the 3 signs rather than the 21 signs that we've all been discussing for the year?
I would have to review that contract you're referring to. If the board approved a construction contract for all of the signs, then clearly there would have to be an amount set and the scope of work to be performed. I recall the board selecting 3 signs, and my understanding was that they were to go forward with construction drawings on those signs to be bid out to be constructed. Maybe I missed something, but that was what I was left with.
Well, I think there's...
And then we decided that we asked them if at a later date we wanted to continue on. Would that change the pricing? And she said no, she didn't think so.
I'm not sure what that means. I guess my question is, excuse me, Rick, I guess my question is, when and if we make a decision at a later date to include more signs down the road, because we do have a profile now of 21 signs, do we have to go back and pay for construction drawings?
I would answer that this way. As related by Supervisor Holbert, it appears that they were willing to prepare the construction drawings for all the signs, and if that's the case, I would say we should strike while the iron is hot and get those drawings and get them in the...
That's my point exactly.
And I think you need to go back. I believe there were options that you could choose from on the remaining signs. It was not just one sign. There were options, and you need to tell the sign company, I want option A, B, or C.
That's fair enough. We can address that.
We can bring that back at the June 12th meeting.
That would be
and let
fine.
y'all decide what options you want, and then we can forward that.
I know the board picked the number 2 option for the signs, but we have, like you say, the golf course and the direction and so forth. But I would be very pleased if we could bring that up at the June 12th meeting then, because we should strike while the iron's hot, according to John. Okay? The other question I had relates to the tennis project. It's a pretty messy site, Mike, and one of the things that I noticed was that there is an access road, and it's not just dirt, but it has gravel and it has asphalt material in it that are going around from the parking lot to the back of the tennis courts. And my question is, are we fully, or I should say excavation point, are they fully committed to cleaning that site, including that road? Because that's prime lakefront property for us.
Yes.
No questions about that?
No, sir. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Any unfinished business? New business? Committee reports? Public comment?
One of the reasons I came here today, Bill Jackson, by the way, that I'm going to say something that's probably going to make some of these board members shudder, even though I certainly do like the job they've done. But I live over in Unit 2, and until recently I wasn't aware of how bad our code enforcement and the rules we have are. I had a rental home open up just down from me, and some young people moved in. Well, they brought along with them their ATVs, and they weren't bashful about using them. And so we fought like that. Now, the rule on that is, if we catch them driving them, and we get them pulled over, we might be able to do something about it. That's not going to happen. How are you going to catch these guys? Secondly, there was a big basketball post right down at the end of my street put up. And I've seen those before, and I think kids should have them. It's fun. But they put it up right at the edge of the road. I'm talking about right at the edge of the road. And if anyone wasn't looking real close and they drove down there, they'd hit the damn thing. Also, yards. I asked, what are the code things for yards? Well, 18 inches high. I said, is that grass? Well, if that's grass, that's no code thing. You got weeds that grow faster than that. By the time you get it 18 inches of grass, you'll have weeds up to your hips. I think we are lacking in proper code enforcement rules. I spoke to the county, which I do often, and I suggest to them, are we tied into the county rules? And they said, no. If you want to make more restrictive rules, you can do that. But every time I mentioned somebody working on this, a great many members go into apology. Just, oh yeah. Now, I've been there over 10 years. I've seen millions and millions of dollars spent on certain things that no one had any problem getting done. But now I asked for a few upkeep rules to be done, and we've got to send a bunch of our people to the hospital to get over their grief. So I would like to start to come up with some suggestions. And once we get some suggestions, we'll bring them in. And the board can look at them. That's just the beginning. We can look at them and see what they're talking about doing. And then they get permission, then we'll get a committee together, a few people, who will help with this. And before it's over, we'll present to you a series of our suggestions. And the board will have to approve them. Now, I'm telling you now, I'm already 71 years old, and I wanted to get this done before I died at 80. Because if I live that long. So I'd like to have the board tell me it's okay to go ahead. And I'll begin work on this, and if I draw other people in. But if we get to the point where we're put to the board and we want to get something done, we'll form a committee. So everyone can have an input, what they want to say. But I'm tired of driving around seeing empty houses and some, Unit 2 too. Also parking. Most of us in Unit 2 only have a one-car garage. So if you park properly, you can only get 2 cars unless you stick a car in the garage. Well, no one has place in a garage, even if it's like mine. So, but these people, I got these people down there have 12 cars parked there. They park all over the lot and in different directions. Put them in sideways. Nothing we can do about that because of the rules. Now, we shall get tougher on all this parking. One thing is if they want to widen to have a second spot to park, which you give them 4 cars there, we ought to control that to some extent as to how that should be covered. Just not throw a bag of mulch down, because that's the way it is now. So I've lodged my complaint. I hope everyone still feels good after I had it to say. And I'd like to move ahead and work on this issue. And sometimes I'll bring it up here to you guys, and maybe by then you'll want me to stay away again, and so you can just approve it, and I will. But I think we're entitled throughout the district, especially Unit 2, which has unique things that I've never seen much done for over there, that we can get some of this solved with rules that you know you can't enforce. And they haven't been enforced very well before this. So I'd like to suggest that you let me do that. And I'll be nice. I know that's an odd thing, me telling me I'll be nice, but I will. I'll be nice to a certain extent. But I thank you for your time.
Actually, I had the same thoughts last year, and I did go to the county and ask the same questions you did, and I got a different answer. They said you could put in more restrictive codes, but you need 85%?
Yeah.
Or, I think I was told 85% of the residents have to vote for it. So it isn't a matter of us just saying we're going to do that. We actually have to vote for it.
No. Go ahead, Mike, tell them.
You want to do it? Want you? Go ahead, John.
First of all, just as a matter of information for everybody here, it is anything in the yard that grows over 18 inches. Any weed, any single weed would trigger that, not all the grass. But with respect to the county, my clear recollection is when the district began code enforcement itself, it was based on health education, the general welfare of the public. So we were limited to what we could do to what they allowed us to do. Mr. Macbeth was very clear on that part first. And secondly, the other part he was very clear on was that the county wasn't going to turn over code enforcement to the district. They were going to retain code enforcement efforts. So I don't know who you spoke to, Mr. Jackson, but that part I'm quite sure the county made clear that they reserved the right to enforce the codes within the district because that's part of the county. With respect to the 85% rule, I've never heard anything like that. I have no clue what that's about. But the bottom line is this, that the county ordinance is what controls code enforcement in the district. The district has no independent authority whatsoever to control code enforcement. That's a police power that's reserved to the county. That is not within our charter capability. So every time we want to change the code enforcement ordinance, we need to know what we want, and we need to go to the county, and the county has to agree with what we want, and only then would it be considered by the board at the county to whether or not to change the county ordinance, which we're governed by. So just in a nutshell, that's the way that works.
Well, it seems like I hear this, you hear that, they hear this. I suggest we all three go down and talk to people and see what they have to say. And then we can establish a plan to do what necessary done. It should not be a problem getting no county to approve anything, because they have in the past for us a lot of things I didn't want, but that's okay. But I'm tired of hearing about what we can't do, and we just have to live with this crap. And we're already paying $600 some a year, and I don't want to pay any more until I actually get some service on this. But I'll keep a smile on my face and hope in my heart that we can address this issue. So let's the three of us go down there, and we'll talk to the same person. Our person who's over, you probably have better contacts than I do. I'm just a lowly common person. But we'll go down there and hear what they got to say. Then we'll see what we have to do. And I'll take that into consideration when we work on this.
As you know, I work at the direction of the board. So if the board says they want to spend my legal fees to go down there, I will. If they don't, I won't.
Okay.
Well, I spoke for the board today about legal fees on something.
Okay.
And they seem to accept that well enough. Maybe they can accept...
All right.
You got
your
people
point
behind you.
Huh?
You made your point.
You made your point.
Rusty Carino, resident. I just want to thank the board. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had a little dilemma, and Mr. Ford and his staff helped me out tremendously. I had a big old sand pine tree kind of blew over into my yard, and I called him up on the phone and notified him of my situation. It seemed like as soon as I got off the telephone, him and his staff was out there clearing up, getting rid of that pine tree and restoring my property back to normal. So I want you to be notified. That did an outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't attend meetings much anymore. My name's George Puffenberger. I'm a 20-year resident. But just a very quick, you talked about signs. What's the latest number for sign purchases?
It hasn't been put out to bid yet.
Has not been put out for bid.
No.
So the three you're talking, about, what's the price?
It's out to bid. We haven't
don't
received
have
pricing.
We haven't
don't know.
received a price yet.
Okay. The reason I ask the question is I'll read the board minutes of every meeting, but You know, I've been here 20 years, and I remember when we had to rob Peter to pay Paul. I also remember when Peter ran out of money. Well, now that the current board members didn't experience any of those hard times. But we've got, I don't know how much outstanding on the books now, committed funds. Under the signs, the maintenance building, which I think now is upwards of $1.2 million. That has not been decided, I assume, but I read where there's conference rooms in there, there's offices for folks. And then we're debating this morning trying to protect or pay for supervisors who are afforded protection under district policies. Well, I agree with Lenny, that issue should never come up. It's a policy, you agree to it and vote. It's pretty simple. If the person who's the grievance filed against loses, he pays the fee. So I don't know what the lengthy discussion was about. The other issue is if you have a strong leader or a strong general manager, board members don't have to get involved. They should not be involved in directing employees. I think everybody up there knows that. But if you have a general manager who is not actively involved in doing these things in the community and knows exactly what's going on day to day, I can understand board members' involvement. That's where the problem is set in. Tom Cossey had it exactly right. We're going to pay the money. There's going to be an investigation on both sides. What comes out of that investigation, I suspect, will be one will be dropped. The other, there's issues on both sides. I won't discuss that. The other thing is on this tree situation, do we still collect the fees from folks who live on the golf course?
Yes.
So then I think anytime you have a tree planting situation and you're charging for an extra fee because you live on the golf course, I think folks who live on the golf course have a valid argument. If you're planting trees that obstructs their views, if you do away with the fee, you don't have that issue. And I don't suspect that fee makes a lot of money for the district. Because the way we're going through money, I mean, you're also spending over $1 million on water meters that I don't think we ever needed. But that's after the fact. I'll be interested to see what the ROI is on those water meters, and I'm tracking it. Another issue is I understand now we're going to give the county another batch of lots, or we're trying to, simply because we don't want to pay tax on them. I'd be very cautious how much we give to the county, because lots are an asset. Say the lots cost us $20,000, $25,000 a year in taxes. We made a heck of a lot of money more than that when NRPI came in, when nobody ever thought we'd sell another lot here. You know, I think you have to look at the viability of what you're giving away. If it's any place in a buildable area, we should hang on to that. If we get to the point where we simply can't afford them, then give them away. But we're certainly not at that point at this time. Anyway, I have, you know, as I said about the new general manager, I think you should retire the current one as soon as you can. If you got to pay him a few dollars, pay him and let him go. I don't think he wants to be here. I know most of us don't want him here. But I also think that you might have issues with the new general manager. I don't know what the expertise is in government running special districts. I think we pay enough money to hire a competent general manager. I'm not saying the one you hired is not competent. I don't know her expertise. I know she is an excellent accountant and an excellent auditor. And lots of times the military had a saying, good sergeants don't make good captains. Thank you.
Bud, to answer one of your questions, it's all of the projects we have on the docket right now is problematic to all of us. I mean, and I do remember robbing Peter to pay Paul when
Peter run out of money, right?
Right. Thank you.
Jerry Van Ooster, resident. I'm just wanted to question, LT called me last night. He's my neighbor. He told me he was assured that the letter that he and Linda wrote would be, he spoke to someone in the district and would be assured that that letter would be read into the minutes of the meeting. And from listening to the comments about the police investigation, he was also concerned that there was no collusion or no determination that he was guilty of killing those trees. And he was concerned that the trees that were replanted were between height and width 3 or 4 times as big as the trees they replaced, and was wondering why the dead trees were left there next to the new trees that were planted.
The trees that were replanted were the smallest available at the time, and we purchased 4 of them. We can take the dead trees out now, I think. We'll ask the golf guys to take the dead trees out.
Okay, so you're saying there was no place in the county?
No.
There was no place in the county where you could have found a tree the same time,
No,
same
sir.
size?
We went back to the same vendor, and he didn't have any more of the smaller trees. We got the next available size.
So that's the vendor that we didn't get 3 quotes for to do all of the trees to begin with?
It's a vendor that we spent probably a couple $1,000 on pine trees.
So there was no other vendor that you could have put in the same size tree that was replaced?
We did not go and get quotes on 4 pine trees, no, sir.
If you look there and you live there, it seems to be punitive.
Well, that was not the intent.
Well, it certainly seems that way.
Stan Paralikas again. Based on what I said previously, I do want to thank everybody on the board for their service. I have no doubt of the time and effort and their dedication to Sun and Lake. I want to get that aside. What I want to talk about is the positions that are offered, openings in the Sun and Lake District. I do look at the website often, and I never see positions, or rarely see positions posted for openings. I don't know what the threshold is, if it's written anywhere. I have not been able to find it on what positions need to be posted if there's an opening, or if there's a salary limit. I'm not, the only one I can probably make a good example of, but it's not those positions only. Let's say, for example, security. I don't believe, I have looked at the websites, I've never seen openings for in security, for example. Should those be posted, or is that left to the discretion of someone?
Mr. Wright?
The postings of employment openings by security are the discretion of the public security supervisor. If we need to advertise it, we haven't needed to advertise a security position in quite some time.
So it's left to his discretion on whether he wants to post it or not.
Well, if we have an advertised opening that we advertise in the paper, then we will also post it on the website.
I'm not picking on security specifically.
Oh, okay,
It's just that
okay.
Not security specifically. They're the only ones I can use as an example for the district at large.
Yes, if we have an opening that we advertise in the paper for, we should be posting it to the website.
And even a position such as a security opening would have to be posted?
It doesn't have to be posted, but it's at the discretion.
At the discretion of who?
It would be the general manager. But I think
The general manager.
all employment openings that are advertised in the newspaper should be posted to the website.
I'm going to make this really, really quick as far as the general manager. Upon his contractual commitment when it ends, think what you may about Julian DeLeon, but I think the board should extend a discussion out to him. He's an ambitious gentleman. We know how he has straightened out Avon Park. Avon Park has a mayor, but he has literally straightened out Avon Park on his own, to the detriment of a lot of people's opinion, but he's a good man. He'd make one hell of a general manager. And with the money that we're paying our general manager now, it would be sufficient to lure Mr. DeLeon back to Avon Park. I don't know how any of you feel about him with his past employment experience. All I know is what I've seen, what I've seen him do, and the hearsay, over-the-fence gossip. I would just like the board to maybe extend some kind of... Okay. Thank you.
Just to let you know, we've already hired Mr. Wright's replacement.
I missed that part.
Okay.
I'm sorry I missed that part.
Okay.
Stan, I agree that Julian he certainly was a good public works director when he was here in Sun and Lake.
I'd like to see him back. I wish we could have him there.
Well, we've gone through a process
I understand.
several months, and we're finished with that.
Al, I wasn't going to come up here, Joe, act for the record. But since I'm here, and I don't know when I'm going to be back, who we got for code enforcement since Bob was injured?
I don't know his name, so.
We've been basically filling in with Mr. Hurley, and he's had some folks he's brought in to help him on a part-time basis.
Who?
Mike Hurley.
You mean that guy back there?
Yes.
Well, Mike, you're violating the law. That man has not got code enforcement training. He has security, but he doesn't have code enforcement. Now, the only code enforcement that we should have here now is the county. Beverly and April or one of the other fellows. Mike's got enough to do taking care of the code enforcement. But anyway, that's bull. And it's all your fault. Now, the board, I'd like for somebody up there to start getting up off of their backside and do something with Unit 2. Michael, I'm still waiting on my street lights. 3 years now. And that is a thorn in my side. Also, Unit 2 is turned into be a rental area home sites there. Something needs to be done in a resolution or whatever, that whoever buys homes out there for rental purposes have some restrictions of what can and what can't be done. Right now, around me, I've got 5 different rental homes out there, and gratefully, the people do take care of their yards and that. But Unit 2 was the first unit that was ever built in here in 1974 when they started it. My home was built in 77, and I still like my home better than Manor Hill. I had a Manor Hill home in which I built myself, as I was a contractor at one point. But I also heard, too, that the water fees was wanting to be raised. Is that a fact or not?
No.
No?
We had a discussion about water fees at the last meeting, which will be brought up during the budget meetings. Right now, they're not being raised, no.
Well, from what I understood, and I heard it through the grapevine, that they was wanting to raise the water fees, and also, let me finish, Herb. Also, too, that they wanted to increase the assessments by another $50 to help pay for that maintenance building. Now, that maintenance building there, I think there's enough money into the kitty in there to pay for that twice.
I did suggest we consider having a capital improvement fund for 5 years at $50 a year. I did say that, and I think Mr. White suggested during that same meeting that we look into raising the water fees by 10%. Well, if I recall correctly. $3. $3?
It was $3.
I thought it was 10%.
No.
Okay. Which would be $3 roughly.
Yeah.
Well, the thing of it is here, I've been here 14 years, and I fought this board there when Savarino was up there and all. And I'm not coming back to fight you people. But the thing of it is, there was I think it was a 710 assessment put on the water meters. They're what they call the Eurythic Fund. There is no such thing as a Eurythic Fund as far as I know, because it never was established, and why are we still being charged $710 for the Eurythic Fund? Michael don't know nothing about that, because that happened before his time was here. You can't even get the bill to where it tells you how much your sewage is going to be in gallons wise. You use the gallon calculator to estimate what your sewer bill is going to be.
No, it's on the bill.
I'm sorry?
It's on the bill. Tells you how much your water and how much your sewer.
They estimate it from the water, Herb.
Right.
All my water don't go down that drain.
So does none of my water goes down that drain either.
I don't wash my car with the well water. I wash it with supposed to be fresh water, which brings another thing to the water system too. Why are we getting rust out of the system down in Unit 2? I had John out there, and he says that's what the state requires. So now I've got an investigation going on whether that water is right or not.
Joe, watch your blood pressure. Watch your blood pressure.
Hey, I'm calm, boy.
Calm down.
Might be your pipes.
Bud.
Hey,
you got anything else?
I learned to be calm.
Is that it? Your 3 minutes are up.
Yeah, and so far I've got no gripes.
Okay. Oh, good. Thank you.
Have one.
Frank Guglielmi again. I'd like to make a couple more comments. Number one is, if anybody here has managed people, they know that the most important job he has is to protect the people that work for him, because they're the ones that make him a success or a failure. The general manager needs to understand that. Okay, if you have people that cannot do the job, you get rid of them. But the ones that do the job, you reward them and you make sure they're protected. The other one is regarding the cart path. Excuse me, the cart paths that they've been put in the golf course now. I hear a lot of criticism about the job that's being done, and it isn't perfect. But the question you need to ask is, does it do the job? Okay? I feel that it does. And, Mr. Hartstein, Jeff Hartstein, I don't know him that well, but I know he's done work for us before, and he's done a good job. His finances right now, he's really struggling because the golf situation being what it is, he owns Placid Lakes, and I guess he's almost broke. My suggestion to the board would be, and it's strictly a suggestion, consider, does the path and the curbs, do they do the job? If they do the job, even if they're not the best in the world, accept it as it is, talk to Mr. Hartstein and say, if it fails, if it starts breaking up, you come and fix them. To have those paths torn up right now would be one heck of a mess. Okay? It'll create more problems than it's going to solve. Also, the specs and so on, there's cart paths on Turtle that don't meet specs. I never knew that until this whole thing was brought up. And, personally, I think you should consider Mr. Hartstein's situation. What goes around comes around. You do him a favor now, he'll come back and help us, I'm sure. Because the work he's done for us before, it's been absolutely first rate. So please consider that before you cut his legs off. Thank you.
Frank, that issue had been brought to the board. We don't, I know that somebody said that they're not meeting specifications. I didn't know anything about tearing them up or anything of that nature. So, you obviously know more than we know at this point.
Yeah, well, it's not. He hasn't finished on number 2 because he feels that somebody's going to make him tear them down. Okay. Because they don't meet specs. I guess I don't know what specs are. You have a cart path where you ride the cart, and you have a curb to keep the carts off the tees and the greens. Do they do the job? Yes, they do. And I think we need to accept what he has. He's done a better job as he goes on, and I think the cart paths will do the job. And that's the first question is, do they do the job? Thank you.
Dave, can you get up and answer that?
Oh, don't.
Wait a minute.
David Bell, Golf Course Superintendent. It was put in my, I gave you the update on following David Ford's update for the golf cart project. We have had some issues with the contractor meeting specifications on holes 2 through 4. We did give him a notice of deficiencies. He had to resolve his problems he was having, and which we've had dealt with. But as far as the stuff that is being deficient, we have asked that stuff be removed, but I don't think anything has been. We haven't got to the point to address that with the board yet.
Thank you.
David, what specification portion is he not conforming to?
The width at the top of the curb, okay, and the width at the bottom of the curb.
Are they obviously smaller than they're supposed to be?
On the specification sheets, it calls for the top of the curb to be 5 inches and the bottom of the curb to be 7 inches. The stuff that he began pouring on 2 T-box, he tried to
make it smaller?
Well, no, they didn't try to make it smaller. They tried to, they didn't use a form board. They tried to roll the curb by hand, and the workmanship was not up to par. Yeah, not up to par. And so he got a tool to shape the curb going forward. The tool that he used did not meet the specifications for the next couple of sections that he did. Then we got another larger tool that does meet the specifications, and that's the tool that he's using now.
Okay.
Is it because that they're rough, or they're just not tall enough or wide enough? What's the main issue?
The stuff from 2 through 3 is too narrow and too square.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Larry Bertitto, I won't repeat anything else that's gone on here today because
then you
we've
better
discussed it enough. So I only have one little comment. And I see a lot of people that ride around, a lot of people in the district. And does anyone know, and I know Mr. Wright knows, there's been an open manhole cover for probably 9 months on Ponce de Leon. And it's amazing how no one could see as they go down the road that you have an open manhole. And it's been fixed because we put up 4 sticks with the yellow tape. The only thing I can figure out is there must be a shortage of manhole covers. So I would think that would be sort of a priority after 9 months to cover the manhole. Thank you. On Ponce de Leon, and I think the street is at Andrine or something is where it comes in. I mean, you can, But then one of the things is a lot of people don't use that street, but I would assume that someone from the district would know they have an open manhole. Do what?
Someone runs into that hole.
Well, maybe a kid could fall in, don't it? But it's not important, though.
All right, back to the board. Any more comments?
Yes. Allison, would you please distribute these envelopes? And this is for you. Bert, for you and Mr. Dave. I've been told by our attorney, John, that I have to petition for inclusion on our next an agenda item for inclusion in our next meeting. But basically, I'm putting forward and asking the board and John to either prepare a motion or a resolution that we advance Mike Wright's retirement 3 months to June 30th instead of October 1st. And I do it for basically 2 reasons. It's been clear to me that Mike's heart is not in his job anymore. He's moving toward retirement, and I'm not sure that he's paying attention to the things that we need to pay attention to on a daily basis. And I also think that we're moving into a budget development process. Our annual process starts in June, and I think our new general manager, Tanya Canaday, ought to be and have the right to be her own person when it comes to implementing the budget for the next fiscal year. And I have a series of recommendations at the end of this memo, and it calls for Mike to step aside June 30th, Tanya to take the reins on July 1st. We settle all contractual matters with Mike with the understanding that he will make himself available to either Tanya or Kurt as board president for consulting until the time of his contract end October 1st. So I'm not sure how you guys want to handle it. Kurt, you could even negotiate if you wanted to from that standpoint. But John, I'm proceeding along the lines that you counseled me on, so I'm asking for that agenda item to be put at the next board meeting, and an appropriate resolution to that effect covering these recommendations that I make at the end.
And if the board directs me to prepare that resolution, certainly I will do so.
You can prepare it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
My only concern is if we're going to negotiate a settlement, then how do we try to get that done before the resolution, or do we get it done after the resolution? Because maybe the resolution won't pass and then be no reason for it. So you tell me what to do.
Well, I'll be happy to after I look at it.
Okay. Well, that's it. I haven't read it yet either.
I think the Mr. Miller's request basically is that the retirement would be effective June 30th, and the remaining balance of the contract would have to be paid out, and benefits provided, particularly insurance.
Let me read the recommendations to you, okay? And you can all follow. I propose that a motion or resolution be prepared and placed on the June 12, 2015 board agenda to 1, release Mike Wright from his duties as general manager as of June 30th, 2015, settling any outstanding contractual matters with him as of that date. And 2, to name Tanya Canaday as our full-time general manager as of July 1st, 2015. At which time she will receive all salary, employee benefits, and other additional support items as stipulated in her already executed general manager employment contract. Mr. Wright, by written agreement, will no longer have office space at the district, but will make himself fully available during normal district working hours for consultation on district matters as needed and or determined by M.S. Kennedy or by the President of the Board. This availability will commence on July 1st, 2015 and end on September 30th, 2015. A ceiling of 519 hours for these consulting services is established by the contractual agreement covering his severance salary payment for the remaining 3 months on his general manager agreement.
What is 519 hours, 3 months, basically? Okay.
173 a month.
Okay. All right.
I've not spoken to Mr. Wright about this at all.
That's the first I've heard of it.
And so my recommendation is I meet with Mr. Wright and let's see what we can get completed and present to the board. Yeah, it might be that I'm just suggesting, I don't know, but it might be that he would be willing to accept regular monthly payments in accordance with his existing salary from now to the end of his contract. I know there's a provision that says if the board terminates it early, that he's entitled to 6 months payment, and perhaps that could be some kind of a compromise. I don't know. We'll see what we talk about.
That's one of the questions I had when I was looking at it is if he gets terminated within the 6 month period, does the payout
full 6 months?
Is it
right.
full 6 months,
that's
or does it terminate on September 30th?
I would have to look at that as
me too as well.
Well, let's remember there's a difference between advancing retirement and termination. I'm not asking us to fire the guy. I'm just saying that it seems appropriate this time to take that step. And further, I would like Kurt McCullough to be involved in any discussions in this particular area.
I'm all for that too, sir.
Okay. All right. So we'll move. Yeah, exactly. Yippee. Any other comments? Meeting's adjourned.